Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, 5 Effective Strategies to Stay Ahead of Workforce Shortages. I'm Jennifer Getz, the Editorial Director of Facility Executive Magazine, and this webinar is presented by Limble. Limble is a maintenance management software, or CMMS in other words. With Limble, facility managers and maintenance teams are empowered to make maintenance management and decision-making easy. With a simple modern platform to manage work orders, assets, inventory, and reporting, everything you need to make maintenance decisions is all in one place. Before we get started, I'll cover a few housekeeping items. There will be a question and answer segment at the end of this presentation today. Please find the question box in the dashboard on your screen. This is where you can submit questions for our speakers today. If at any time you experience a technical difficulty, please send us a message via the question section and someone on our team will answer you privately. Now, workforce shortages continue to be a challenge for facility executives. A lack of qualified staff hinders efficiency, productivity, product quality, and service by limiting the availability of skilled hands for essential tasks. Overall, workforce shortages can impact an organization's ability to compete. The burning question then becomes, what's the best course of action to not just navigate, but overcome this challenge? Well, we have good news to share. We're going to equip you with the top 5 strategies that facilities professionals are implementing to overcome workforce shortages, along with additional strategies you can put into practice today. Now, without further ado, I'm happy to introduce your speakers. Brian Christensen is a self-taught full-stack developer turned marketer turned entrepreneur. He started Limble CMMS in 2015. Limble is a larger success than he could have imagined and feels blessed to be their CEO. John Reimer has nearly 30 years of facility management experience in a variety of capabilities and in a variety of capacities and industries. He has worked in numerous sectors, including higher education, high tech, corporate real estate, data centers, healthcare, manufacturing, and public entities. He and his team use their breadth of knowledge and diverse expertise to provide comprehensive consulting and support services. Erin Bogan has spent her career facilitating change, performance improvement, and technology optimization at growing organizations. She creates high quality and valuable educational and thought leadership content on those same topics, and facilitated the data gathering and analysis that became the State of Facilities report our webinar today is based on. So thank you all for joining us today. Erin, take it away.
Thank you, Jen. So as you all know, in a recent survey we conducted at Limble, we found that 51% of facilities management professionals say that addressing workforce shortages is one of their top 3 challenges. So it's right up there with other things like downtime and breakdowns, dealing with aging infrastructure. And Jen gave a great lead-in about why skilled worker shortages is such a critical priority and addressing them for facility managers and maintenance professionals. So just to start right off the bat, I would love to get some thoughts from John and Brian on, seeing this statistic. Are you surprised that this is such a high priority for the facility management field this year?
Definitely not a surprise, because unfortunately we've been seeing this coming for well over a decade. We've been talking about it for quite a stretch of time. We have not figured out how to really bridge that gap. Of course, we've got some strategies we'll cover today, but I hate being the bearer of bad news, but we have not seen the worst of it yet. We still have roughly 25% of our skilled workforce yet to retire by 2030. So it's not a matter of hey, how can we get ahead of this or get over the hump? It's well, no. How do we continue to prepare ourselves to mitigate this gap? And again, what strategies can we put in place to help us continue to provide the services that we need to?
And I'll just echo that. It doesn't surprise me at all. As I talk to more and more customers that use Limble, this is a recurring theme that just comes up. Getting the right people to be able to come do all the work that's needed to be done, especially with the right skill set, is just proving to become more and more difficult.
Absolutely. So, it's a really tough challenge and it feels like it's being experienced pretty broadly across the industry. So, we're excited to share some strategies, and we have kind of 5 that we've assessed through our survey, and we hope to kind of give you some great input on those and actually give you more than 5 operational, really actionable tasks that you can take away and start using even today. So our 2 main goals for this webinar today are to discuss those workforce shortage challenges. So what are you facing, and get some input from you on, what are the unique things that you might be experiencing in your own organization. And then also sharing some of those strategies. How are other organizations dealing with workforce shortages, and how can we dig into some of those strategies to give you some of those actionable takeaways?
Perfect. I'm happy to hop in to learn a little bit more about the survey that you guys conducted. So what drove Limble to decide to conduct this survey?
Yeah, so there were really several reasons. Ultimately, as an organization in service to facility management professionals and maintenance managers, we want to make sure that we stay on top of what's going on in their day-to-day lives. So it's our job to help find solutions. We have such an amazing group of customers, and information sharing between them is something that we're uniquely positioned to do. So really hearing from our customers about what's working for them, what's not working for them, and what solutions they're going to need in the future is really critical for us to be able to do our job and fulfill our mission.
Perfect. So how did you gather data for the survey, and really who participated?
Yeah, so we surveyed more than 250 facility management professionals. Some were customers, some were not. And they graciously provided input. And so we were able to ask them what their top challenges were. And then for each of those top challenges, we asked them what strategies they were using to address them. So this webinar today is focused specifically on that challenge of workforce shortages and the strategies that people identified for how they're dealing with that.
Perfect. So what do workforce trends look like in today's market for facility management professionals?
Yeah, so this, of course, as we go into the survey, there's some basic research that we are doing as well to kind of understand what we might be hearing and give some context to that, so that we can then turn around and provide more strategies. So at the top of the list really comes, these top two bullet points here really are around, the shifting skill set within the field. So first of all, there's overall declining interest among younger generations in maintenance careers. It's just not elevated as a career option for them, even though it is a career that has a lot of growth potential and opportunity. At the same time, as John mentioned earlier, the workforce is maturing, and many people will be retiring in the next 5-10 years and taking all of their knowledge and experience with them. In addition, there's so much talk around automation and AI and robotics and how that is going to impact the nature of the job, which again leads into that next one, the rising importance of digital skills. Just the nature of the job is going to change. The skill set that people believe they'll need and will need in order to be successful in the role is shifting. There's a greater emphasis on interdisciplinary skills as a result. So not only do you need to know how to fix things and work with your hands, but you also need to be able to work with people, respond to customer expectations, work with different levels of upper management in order to secure resources. It's a very multifaceted role. And so it requires a broad skill set. And then a shift to more flexible working arrangements that pretty much everyone in every industry is seeing right now in their workforces. There are different expectations now than there were 5-10 years ago around, remote working or work schedules. So all these create a lot of challenges for managers. So with that, we'd actually love to hear from, that's what we found in the research. So we'd love to hear from our participants today about what trends they're seeing. Is there anything not in that list that you're really struggling with? We'd love to kind of hear what difficulties you're encountering in resolving workforce shortages there. So I think we've got some Q&A available. So just toss your questions in the Q&A section and we can, oh yeah, here, audience poll. Thank you, Jen, for pulling that up. So yeah, so go ahead and choose the ones that you feel like you're struggling with the most, and which strategies you're using to address those. So this is also kind of echoing what we have asked of our survey participants as well. So if there are things that that you're seeing, go ahead and select other, but we'd also love to hear, this is a similar question that we asked our survey participants. So really, let's just echo that and kind of see, are you encountering similar things in your day-to-day?
And you have about 20 to 30 seconds to respond. Okay, so it looks like recruitment and retention was the biggest result with 57%, followed by pay and benefits at 29%, and then outsourcing and tech efficiency were both tied. But there was no one chose upskilling actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's really interesting. Some of those are very consistent with what we have seen in our survey. So that's a great segue. These are the results that we found.
Mm-hmm.
Get to the next slide here. So you can see how this broke down. So recruitment, attention again, and retention, again, for our survey participants, that was also the top strategy. So this kind of gives context to, you know, how to address the workforce shortages, depending on, you know, what industry you're in or what organization you're in, its size, its focus, pretty much, you know, tackling recruitment and retention in a creative way is a top way that people are addressing this. So at the same time, outsourcing, pay and benefits are kind of right behind that. And then upskilling and tech efficiency also for our survey respondents fell kind of on the lower end, but for the most part, there's not a lot of variation here in our survey results that we did. So it's kind of interesting that people are like throwing a lot of different strategies out there, trying to establish, you know, a variety of approaches. And first, we're going to start by digging into recruitment and retention to kind of talk a little bit more about some of those actionable strategies. So as we just saw, 52% of our respondents cited that recruitment and retention. And that makes sense because recruitment and retention is a huge component. You know, you can't backfill open positions if you don't have candidates in the pipeline, if you don't have people that you're bringing in with the right skill set. So it takes a lot of time and effort and resources in order to do that. So I'll toss it out to John and Brian as well. So are there any actionable strategies specifically about recruitment and retention that people can take away today? What are you seeing in the industry that people are doing in order to recruit and retain creatively?
Yeah, that's a great question, Erin. Really, this kind of ties back to what you even posted up there a few slides before of that declining interest by the younger generations. You know, when we look at facilities, it's like, yeah, I've been in this for almost 30 years. Some of the folks on here maybe been in even longer. We've seen our industry evolve, but we're still, I kind of equate it to where we're maybe still in that teenage years where we're growing up, but haven't quite filled in. Still trying to figure out what we want to do when we get older. And with that, you've got kind of that, I'll say, lack of maturity as a career path, and which still bewilders me because when you look around, there's buildings everywhere, and with those buildings requires facility managers, requires building engineers, operators. You know, the demand is there, and the opportunities are great, but we don't do a very good job of communicating and even working, whether it's through high school, tech, you know, colleges, or even universities, of showing this is a clear career path. So I think that is one of the first key ways that, you know, we can go and, you know, try to, you know, borrow and steal the skilled labor that exists now, but it's still not going to be enough to bridge the gap. We've got to get out there and start, you know, working through those different educational channels to say, look, you can be more than, you know, there are other options than going down the business path or doctor or what have you. Facilities are the great path. And I tell young folks all the time, it's like, you don't want to go to a university and maybe go into all that debt. You know what? Go get a skilled, skilled job, and you can basically be making, doing a blue collar job, making white collar money, and you'll be able to go anywhere you want to be. I mean, you can develop your own career path. But I think we as an industry need to show them, well, you come in at this position, and then you can continue to elevate through that career path, and not just say, well, I'm going to be, an HVAC journeyman my entire life. It's like, no. There's more that you can do here. Let us show you how to get there.
I would echo what you're saying also about just there's a problem with education. There really should be whole tracks at colleges, and I'm starting to see some. So that is a trick, right? Look at your local colleges or even colleges that are a little bit further away and see if they actually have a degree there. And if they do have a degree there, talk to the professor and say, hey, we're looking to hire people. You know, if you have a great student, send them our way. And that's one little hack on helping with the recruitment. The other hack is there's different communities that are starting to pop up. Limble is about to launch our own community where we're going to allow all of our customers, but also people who aren't our customers, to be able to network. And one of the key areas there are job postings. So there are communities that you can join to post, hey, I need maintenance tech with this type of skill set. And again, those communities can be found by providers like Limble, or I've seen Facebook groups, or I've seen Reddit posts. There's different areas that you can post to try and find people. And sometimes those people even move to your area. Sometimes you find people wanting to hop from one type of maintenance industry to another. Going from like food processing to another more general facility, for example. So if you keep your eyes out in those areas, those you can find some good recruits there. On retention, how, and I'll be speaking a little bit more to how we retain in our company, which to be fair is different than a general like manufacturer, for example. But a lot of the core principles are the same. Build a solid culture, right? Help people understand why they're here. Help them really understand that without them, the entire facility stops running. They are a key aspect of making everything work. So we had one customer that did a really great job with this. They do medical services to a whole bunch of migrants in the States. And so they have these vehicles they have to drive around to provide the medical services. And the maintenance manager there made sure to tell his team, it's like, look, if these trucks don't work, we can't provide healthcare. So your job is really about providing healthcare to those that need it most. And they were able to build a message and a culture on the importance of the work that they were doing. And that helps people feel that they're coming to work not just for a paycheck, but they're coming to work to actually do good. And so leading with a strong culture is a big hack, and it's very possible to do. Another big thing on retention is allowing people to see how they're going to make progress. And so all throughout my company, we talk about different career paths. And so, for example, with one of our sales reps, we'll say it's level 1, 2, and 3. And then we'll clearly document what do you need to do to go from 1 to 2 and 2 to 3, and how long it may take and the type of behaviors you're wanting and all of that, so that when you do hire a maintenance tech, they can see, how do I become a level 2, or how do I become a team lead, or how do I do that, so that they can see, oh, I can actually progress in this company. And if you know those two things, there's actually a real purpose, and I can see how I can personally grow. We here at Limble, we have extremely good retention. Almost no one ever quits. And those are Erin kind of laughs a little bit there because she knows
Sure.
that is living it. But those two things are really big hacks on retaining the staff that you hire.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that. So what I'm hearing, just to kind of sum up, telling the story of the career path. So helping people understand that there is a real career path in this field, working with local educational institutions to help you tell that story, using communities to do outreach if they're professional organizations, go to peers, work with colleagues locally. And then, and as far as retention, building a connection to the mission, and then building a strong career growth path that you can share with employees. Those are all great suggestions. And we can move on, I think, to the next strategy. The next most cited strategy in our survey is outsourcing. So 43% of our survey participants cited outsourcing as their second top strategy for addressing labor shortages. And this comes with its own kind of its own set of management challenges, or it's just a different way of managing that work. What are your thoughts on professionals prioritizing outsourcing so highly? Are there other effective strategies, what might they consider doing more of, and how could outsourcing be fit into a strategy for addressing workforce shortages?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen outsourcing continue to grow in popularity. I don't think that's going to change, but to try to use outsourcing to offset the skilled labor shortage, it's maybe a short-term gain, but those contractors, they're in the exact same boat as you, trying to find that skilled labor workforce that doesn't exist. Now they might have some internal training and things like that, or maybe they've got a better handle on recruitment. Great, leverage it. But if you're saying, hey, you know what, we can't find the people, we're just going to outsource, I don't think you're going to be able to have success to really, again, bridge that gap. So, I would look at, take a step back and reevaluate your organization, because I've seen this where, you're looking at, hey, I'm losing my electrical journeyman, I'm losing, my HVAC journeyman. It's like, okay, they're retiring, but when I go to rehire to backfill that position, well, okay, that was an electrician. Do I actually need a licensed electrician in-house? And you're starting to see folks, rethink a little, but they got to break out of that fixed mindset and go, what do I want my org structure to look like now and even 5 years down the road, so that as they are recruiting, they're basically preparing themselves for success to align with that, long-term org structure, because it really should change and evolve. And then, and again, but you're still not going to have enough hands to turn those wrenches. So this now comes into what we're going to talk about a little bit later, is how do we leverage technology to be a lot more efficient with how we turn those wrenches? So we'll address that a little bit later.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just echo that almost the exact same as you, John. This is a Band-Aid. Outsourcing should be a part of every healthy strategy, just to be clear. But if you think it's going to solve the core problem, which is the recruitment, retention, and efficiency, then you're going to be in for a surprise. And I know this because I've seen a lot of customers who outsource heavily, and unless they do it extremely right, there are so many problems that come from it. I've seen our customers have to, like before Limble, they have basically no transparency on what their vendors are doing. They come in and set it up, and then all of a sudden they get transparency and they get to see what their vendors are doing, and they're like, holy shit, like this vendor's not even doing anything. They can't even tell me when the last time they did a PM on this HVAC they were supposed to be maintaining. And there's so many problems that come to light on from outsourcing that unless you do it right, it's really not a long-term solution. And again, every org should have some form of outsourcing. Bringing up, for example, do I need a full-time electrical expert or whatnot? You might not, right? And in that case, obviously outsource. But if you're trying to outsource to replace full-time staff, unless you really know what you're doing, it's not a strategy that I've seen our customers pull off or do very successfully. But I will agree with John. One of the biggest ways to help handle all of this is just make your existing team a lot more effective through the use of technology. And we'll talk about that a little bit later.
Yeah, so that's great. So I think, what I'm hearing here too is make sure that if you're leveraging outsourcing or vendors for your, to kind of bridge the gap, make it just that, a bridge, bridging a temporary gap, make it a strategy that you can use as a Band-Aid, but not a complete replacement for, the team that you need. And then being open to, changing and evolving org structure. So as you have people and skills and expertise come and go every time, rethinking where those things will fit best amongst the team that you do have. And then, we will get into the tech efficiency as well. So next strategy is upskilling. We're going to flip this around a little bit and start looking at the ones that were cited a little bit less often. So about a third of our survey respondents said that they are leveraging upskilling. And by that, what I think of as upskilling, I immediately think of having staff take online courses, getting digital certifications, things like that. But it can also mean developmental opportunities within your organization. So expanding abilities, minimizing skill gaps. And that's kind of tough because any resources that you spend on internal training, they need to get pulled from somewhere else. So what specific recommendations would you give to managers when it comes to building training programs or kind of helping to develop skills within your team?
Yeah, I'd say, piggybacking off what we just said about, evaluating your org structure, as part of doing that, again, when you're defining where you want to go with respect to your org structure, now then the next step, of course, is to do that gap analysis. So if I know this is what I want my org structure to look like, in those positions, what skill sets do they need? Now we look at, okay, well, what skill sets do I have currently? And we said, okay, well, some of these might have to go hire outside, knowing that that's the shallow pool that we're trying to fish from. But it's like, how do I then grow within? So that, to me, it even goes back to what we even answered earlier. It's like, well, now we're showing a career path and development, which is going to help with the retention of those folks that you currently have, because it's hard to find new ones. So you want to keep the good ones that you do have. So again, investing in them, providing that training. Now, sources for that. And I would love, if you all have good sources, please throw them in the chat, because we're all trying to learn here and help each other out. And that's also going to be one of the benefit of those community spaces like Limble's going to create as well. Because I'm always searching, because I get asked this question all the time, and there are some different online training where you can again, you got to do short bits. I mean, that's the other part, is like, yeah, I used to do building operator certification, great set of courses, but it is a time commitment. And that was, I think, one of the challenges that we might see in today's environment, is not being able to send somebody to go take, 8 days of classes, maybe spread over a few months, but a good opportunity to provide kind of that general knowledge base. So that's the BOC. And then again, you can now backfill with some of the online courses. Many companies have learning management systems. Are you partnering with your HR folks to go and say, all right, this is for this career path, right? This position, here's some of the training that we want to provide. I mean, we're really good at giving them the onboarding of, hey, here's all our do's and don'ts with respect to our policies, but what about actually educating and equipping? We as facilities need to do a much better job of that. And again, share those resources with each other. When you find good ones that say, hey, this has got a great HVAC, training catalog, let's get it out there. Let's let our folks start using it, because otherwise they resort to doing a lot of YouTube. And I run into that quite a bit out there, where somebody's trying to troubleshoot something and they're there with their tool bag and YouTube. So that kind of scares me.
Yeah, the tool bag in YouTube, it is a little terrifying, but that happens all the time, right? So yeah, so there's a lot of great ways to attack the training program. And luckily, this isn't just a maintenance problem. This is a people problem. Every single industry is trying to solve this. And so one of the ways that what I like to do is create what I call a skill tracker. And basically, it's just a simple spreadsheet where you list, here's the core things that you need to know in order to do your job well. And then I tie that to that different levels. So for example, that level 1 needs these 15 skills in order to do the level 1 job. And then level 2 needs these another 7 skills. And then level 3 needs another 8 skills. And then for each person that I'm working with, I'll go ahead and grade them on each skill. And it's a really simple grading system: 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, they're learning it. I'm sorry, 1, they don't know it. 2, they're in the middle of learning it. 3, it's signed off by their direct manager. And then 4, it's signed off by me. And so you can look at all of your team and see exactly across all the skills where they're at. And you actually show that to your team members and go, hey, you need to learn these skills. If you want to progress in the company here, go learn these skills. And these skills, again, can be anything that you want. So you can have them be hard skills, whether that's like troubleshooting HVACs, or you can have it be more people skills, like how do you handle conflict, for example, or how do you de-escalate when an operator is freaking out or whatever. It just depends on your unique setup. It's really, 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 really flexible. But if you have this system where you're tracking everyone and you give the transparency so that your team can see it, all of a sudden they want to start going and learning those skills. And so right next to that, I start building a knowledge base saying that here's videos on this skill, or here's a course that might be an online course given by someone else that really covers, again, HVAC or whatever you want it to be. But that system is really effective in seeing where people are at and helping them move up the ladder. What I'll also add is a mentorship program. And this is super, super valuable. As soon as you bring in a new tech, pair them with a mentor with one of the older techs. And this does a couple benefits. First is you help learning skills and all of that. but it helps them get integrated into the culture that I talked about a little bit earlier, because they get to see, okay, this is what it's really like. It's not just Brian saying who we are and Brian saying the culture. I actually get to look to my colleague who's mentoring me and see that, oh yeah, this is a culture of accountability. This is a culture of caring what we do, what we do matters. And that helps them get ramped up and delivering value to the company a lot sooner than if you didn't do it otherwise.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. So I'm also hearing echoes of like that recruitment and retention piece too, where if you're building skills, you can hire more for potential, and you can bring people in and actually start to develop those skills and help them move along that career path as well. So I like that a lot. And then just to summarize, the gap analysis, which sounds very similar to the skills tracker that you were talking about, Brian, too, really putting down on paper what skills you need, and then tracking your team through that development, leveraging training and certifications for retention as well. So that's that's kind of a benefit, which we're going to get into pay and benefits as well, but that is something that's maybe non-monetary that could be very valuable. And then also curating a knowledge base helps, as you have people leaving the workforce, or identifying resources that are really helpful, putting that all in one place for people to reference. So yeah, you guys both said a lot more than that, but just kind of boiling it down, I think that's a lot of really helpful things here too. So next, we also asked about technological efficiency, and we've made some promises that we're going to talk about this. So kind of circling back to that, another third of our respondents said that they are really investing in technological efficiency to help bridge the gap. So if you have some technology platform or other tools that you can use to make some of the administration of the job a little easier, a little less time consuming, then it frees up time for your team to be able to do more work. That's the idea. So everyone's been talking about this. It's AI. There's all sorts of things around like machine learning and so many emerging technologies. Sometimes it can kind of make your head spin. So, what would you tell team members who are thinking about this as a strategy? And what are some ways that you could begin to drive more technology efficiency to mitigate staffing challenges?
Yeah, I hate to say that I'm actually kind of disappointed that that's only ranking at 36%. I mean, that really should be number one by far, because like we've already talked about, there's not enough hands out there, and we already, the other 3-4 strategies are all revolve around, okay, how do we get those people and how do we keep those people? We've got to leverage technology, and I think ultimately, taking advantage of the technology that we have literally sitting at our doorstep, and even more excited about what's coming to help us be a lot more efficient with how we operate. I mean, sadly, you still have more than half of your organizations are more than 50% reactive. A good reason for that is because, well, they don't have technology in place like a CMMS like Limble. And so they're doing a lot of, reactive firefighting, running around like chickens with their heads cut off. And that is extremely inefficient. I mean, I've done, multiple assessments and analysis. And when you just sit down and see all the wasted time that goes in with reactive maintenance, that really is one of the first key areas that we have to change. And again, that's a whole nother presentation of how do we, evolve and get out of that reactive firefighting. But technology is a very, very key component to that. And so again, going from that reactive maintenance to, yes, preventive maintenance, but it's still very labor intensive. Ultimately, we need to move towards, incorporating the different metering and data monitoring devices that are doing that analysis, so that we go more towards condition-based maintenance, so that we are basically doing the right maintenance at the right time, and again, maximizing the utilization and efficiency of our resources. The second part of that is going to be, I've got to make sure I'm managing everything that we do within facility and operations through a robust CMMS. I mean, I have presented on this multiple times, and I will flat out tell folks, if you do not have a robust CMMS system, you will fail. You're going to stay in reactive firefighting. Your spreadsheets, everything else you're doing isn't going to work. So you do need to have a robust system set up, and it's not just even getting the right system. It's also how do you use it, because it's a business tool. So you have to know how to wield that tool well, so that you can drive those business decisions on a day-to-day basis. Then of course you're long-term strategic, and without that in place, you're going to stay in that reactive firefighting mode.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I've seen literally thousands of people convert from not having a CMMS or having a really crappy, non-robust CMMS to having Limble, which obviously I'm biased, but just go look at us on G2 and whatnot. That'll tell the story. I've seen the before and after of no systems or crappy systems to like real technology, and it's a complete night and day difference. Some of our customers have as high as a 41% productivity increase. And when you look at it, it's like, do you actually have to backfill someone you just lost?
Yep.
Potentially no. And so having like the right technology efficiency, it is so effective. The other thing that a lot of people don't realize is this also is a communication tool. When you have the right, like in the specific on staffing challenges, one of the biggest headaches is just convincing your boss to let you hire someone. Not even like, how do we find them? It's, your boss might just say, hey, do we really even need to backfill this person? A CMS actually gives you that information. When you say, hey, we're completing all of these work orders, we're doing all these PMs, or, our staff is logging X hours. If we don't backfill, we're not going to be able to do these PMs, and that's going to cause these problems. And so not just the efficiency you gain from the technology helps you across almost every single area, to not needing as many. When you do need them, you have the story to tell to actually get the funds to do it. And then when you do hire them, you have the accountability system to make sure that they're effective. And so, again, obviously I'm biased, but I like CMMSs and I think they're insanely important. And I think every company should have them. And then there's a whole bunch of new technology coming down the pipe, some of it that we're creating ourselves that are next to CMMS that help procure parts better, manage vendors better, just do a whole bunch of other great stuff. But if you're still stuck on paper when some of the newer technology comes out, it's going to be even harder to get that adopted. So now's the time to get it in place. And if you don't, you're just going to fall farther and farther behind, and it's going to get harder and harder to actually start getting the advantages that come from all the different technology that's out there.
Yeah, that's amazing. So the big thing I'm hearing is use it, use something. There's too many good technologies out there that could be too effective to not use, to not have a tool like this in your toolkit. So yeah, that's great. And use it, and then spend the time when you do make that choice about, what you want your platform to be. Make sure you spend the time to invest and like set it up well, use it strategically, and that can save you a lot of time and just help you do more with less. One of the other things that I think is really interesting that we found in the survey that we'll cover here is that what we found, like I said at the beginning, we surveyed both customers and non-customers for this survey. But when we asked them that initial question about what are the big challenges you're seeing that you're dealing with, the respondents who were current customers of Limble were significantly less likely to cite workforce challenges. So 46% of Limble customers chose it as a top challenge, compared to non-customers, where 66% of those respondents said that workforce challenges were an issue. Again, this is a challenge across the board, but I think this kind of speaks a little bit to that efficiency you gain, where it's maybe slightly less painful for if you have some of those additional tools that you can leverage to try to gain some more efficiency out of the team you do have. Any other thoughts, comments on those? I think we've kind of, that just kind of echoes and reinforces and validates, what you both were saying.
I'll add one thing. Some people may be thinking is like, this sounds like a lot of work to get going. That used to be true, 5-10 years ago. That's not true now. A lot of our customers get up and going like within a couple of days, and then start seeing an ROI within just a matter of a month or two. So don't, like, technology used to be intimidating. If you pick the right vendor, it's not anymore. And so don't let the past of bad implementations and bad software scare you away from being able to get the results here.
Yeah. Well, and to your point, I think, Aaron, I see this contrast, and I'm not surprised. You know, it really does just, you know, validate the points that we made on the previous slide deck of, you know, once you have that technology, yeah, you will see the benefit. And to Brian's point, it can seem overwhelming to implement a robust system. You know, what we see, because that's a large part of what, you know, we do is help customers, you know, gather data, implement, set up their best practices, et cetera. You know, data is always going to be your first challenge, but you know what? Don't let that necessarily inhibit you. There are paths that you can take to at least start putting in those placeholders, and then you start backfilling the data even after the fact. And I will, you know, I'll give my plug to Limble here. It's really easy to import data, and even to update data within Limble. My team loves using that. But then, you know, I need to build out my PM standards. Now I need to integrate and pull in data. It's all part of putting that implementation path together, and you don't have to do it all overnight. It's building blocks, you know, and do it in phases. It is, you know, it's that whole, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. You just got to have a plan. So build the plan, work the plan, and you will see a night and day difference. You know, the other thing with the technology too, and I'm sure a good part of the efficiency gains is going to come through leveraging mobile technology. And I know that, you know, when I was working with clients 7 to 10 years ago, it was a little bit tougher challenge to get the technicians to adopt, you know, using mobile devices, because again, the average age of your technician is in that mid upper 50s. But you know, in the last handful of years, I've seen that change drastically as well. Whereas a much easier sell to have them adopt using mobile devices, because, well, I don't care how old you are. You know, I mean, I'm playing, you know, Scrabble on the phone with my mother-in-law. So everybody's living in these you know, mobile devices. So it's a lot easier for them to accept it, especially when you have easy to use, intuitive interfaces. And that really is key. And then there's other things you can do to, you know, to optimize, like QR code your assets, things like that, that make it much more efficient and easier for your technicians to utilize these systems to capture their work, to communicate, et cetera. So absolutely, lots of big opportunities here for gains.
And that brings up actually an interesting point to go back to retention. Good technology actually retains your staff. If you force them to use really crappy software or sticky notes or whatever, especially the newer generation that's used to, you know, TikTok, Facebook, all that, they're going to go, you're insane. Like,
Yeah.
why are you making me write all this down? You know, when was the last time I used a pencil? Never. Like retaining the younger generation through good technology is really important. So it'll make them work faster, and they'll be less likely to leave, just because their life, their job is easier. So that is a really important part. The other thing I'll also add about just implementing is, and I think John talked about this a little bit, is you don't have to start with everything at once, right? Do the whole crawl, walk, run. Get in and just add, you know, even if it's only 10 assets, just pick your top 10 that's the most important and just start with that. And I've seen a lot of customers who were drowning in work and they had no time to set up. But then we laid out a plan like that with them. And slowly but surely, they were able to get ahead of all the reactive work they were doing, because they just started with just a few assets. And every month they were adding like 10 more assets until they finally, that it started to tip. And what I mean by tip is the reactive work just started disappearing because they were finally getting the PMs done. And then all of a sudden they had more time, and then they added more assets and did more PMs, and they had even more time, and then they added more assets, did more PMs. And before too long, they were, you know, I think it was like 85%, you know, preventative and 15% reactive. And that's like a beautiful spot to be. And so you can most definitely get this done, even if you don't have a ton of time. Back to the original question, though, or question 5 here. Why do you think we're seeing such a significant contrast? It's for a lot of the reasons that we're saying here. Like, technology just makes life significantly better, and it shores up or improves every single area, not just workforce shortages, not just recruitment, not just retention, but it'll make your life easier and better too, on how you communicate with your boss, and how you decide which, you know, capital expenditures to do, and just tons of different things. So setting up technology is absolutely critical. And you can see it in the numbers here when we do the survey, that Limble customers respond different than non-customers. And even if you don't like Limble for some reason, go get a different CMMS. Like, it's such a core thing that you really got to have one in place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Right. Thank you. It's interesting to see the differences and how the strategies differ between, where you're at in the kind of like technological spectrum in your adoption of some of the technology. So that's great insight. So the last strategy that we haven't talked about yet is increasing pay and benefits. This one kind of came in right in the middle, 41%. But of course, it tends to be one of the first things we think about when we are recruiting or struggling to bring people in the door. It's like, oh, do we just need to pay them more? Is that a viable strategy? So as we think about that, what are some strategies for improving pay and benefits, but also acknowledging that not all organizations are going to have the resources to just be able to throw more money and more, more benefits at the problem? And, that might not even really solve the problem in general anyway. What is your take on this as a strategy, and what are some actionable strategies to make the, kind of compensation programs more attractive?
Yeah, I mean, to answer this question, it's, are there things that we can do that, when increasing pay and benefits isn't an option, it's going to have to be an option. I mean, even something as simple as, I've got a friend of mine who manages, a pizza restaurant. And he's like, with what I now have to pay just to get somebody to work the counter has drastically increased just in the last handful of years. So, I mean, that is the de facto standard. And I think our biggest challenge is maybe making that plea within your organization of, why does facility and maintenance folks need to have their pay increase just like all the other departments are having to do the same thing? So, and the other challenge that we run into is that, yeah, I might have had Joe working for me for the last 35 years, and he's exiting at X amount. But yeah, Joe's leaving with a lot of great knowledge and experience. And now I've got this young person that's maybe only got a few years experience, and they're asking to make as much money as Joe or more, and management's going to have sticker shock. But that is the state of the market. And it also, Joe wasn't getting paid enough. I can tell you that, because we've done a very, very bad job in facilities throughout our whole life cycle as an industry of quantifying, communicating, and selling the value of what we do, because they view us as, we're just maintenance. We're glorified janitors. It's like, no, we do so much more. And that's a drum that I beat routinely. And a very common topic is, how do we quantify, like Brian said earlier, capturing that data within your CMMS so that you can use that that information to go and justify resources, justify reinvestment, but then using that same information to actively and passively sell the value of facilities. Because if we continue to lose on that battlefront, we're going to always struggle in recruiting and also getting reinvestment of replacing assets as they reach end of life, which is another huge challenge. And that's a whole nother discussion in itself. So I know we mentioned earlier that was kind of another little topic that we're working on, is, again, how do we sell the value of facility management? So absolutely. And that will be another discussion for another day.
Yeah, we need to do a whole webinar on that. We need to do a whole webinar on capital, expenditures. How do you replace it? Like, there's a lot more. And for everyone watching, just, check it out. We're going to be doing a whole bunch more in the future. So if you liked this webinar, we're going to provide a lot of other great content. But yeah, I would agree with you again, John. I do think the pay and benefit needs to be higher. The problem really comes from the communication of selling that. And so and I know this because people come ask me for money all the time as a CEO, it happens often. And if they just go, hey, we need more money, the first thing I go is, what's the ROI? And if they go, well, we just need more, the market says we need more, I go, well, that's a good data point, but how does that impact us today? And if my team comes back with a spreadsheet laying out all the different data points on how if we don't do this, we're going to lose this money, or if we do this, then we'll gain this money, then all of a sudden it makes my job as the approver of the budget or approver of the increased pay to go, hey, this is a no-brainer. And so just being able to sell it is very, 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 very important. The other thing that you can do is like, let's actually go get some market data to see. And so this is where communities and other things come into play. You can talk with your other communities and figure out what is the average rate for a maintenance tech in this industry, in this area. And you may find that you're just actually already under. And in that case, that's another data point you can take. And it's not you just saying, hey, the market, we can't find anyone good. Instead, you go and say, hey, I checked out, 10 of the plants around here, figured out what their average, what they were paying, because I'm part of a community where they'll tell me that. And we're 25% under. And, do you want 25% worse staff than others? Well, that's what you're paying for. And those type of data points go a long way with the right type of management. Sometimes you just get really crappy management. I don't know how to fix that. But hopefully you have good management that if you bring a case and say, hey, here's where we're at, here's where we need to be. If we don't do these things, then this is going to cost this or this or this. Yep. Then all of a sudden you're having a real conversation where you're not just thinking about your staff, but you're thinking about the company. And that's a really healthy conversation where you're trying to make everyone win. And so those are hopefully some actionable tips on how do you convince people to increase the pay and benefits, because I do think on average they're just low, and I think it does need to be increased, or else we're going to just continue to see workforce shortages.
Yeah. So maybe what I'm hearing is just a tough pill to swallow, that this is probably something that as facility managers and maintenance managers, we need to get good at making the case for that increased pay and benefits, getting more of those resources, because the team deserves it. And to the extent that you can give yourself resources to help prove that, that's just going to help you make all of your workforce and retention efforts that much easier. So I think that's incredibly helpful.
Yeah, as leaders in the facility management and maintenance manager space, we need to take that unsung and turn them to sung. We need to shed the light. We need to be the advocates for them, showing the good work. And if we do that, the pay and benefits increase will follow.
Yep, absolutely.
Wonderful. Okay, so I think we've covered all of the 5 strategies. And, I think next up for us is some Q&A. So I wanted to leave a little bit of time. We have a few minutes. Jen, is there a method for the Q&A? Where do people go to do that?
So yes, first of all, I just want to thank you, Brian, John, and Aaron for this presentation today. And I want to thank our audience for sending in questions. If you have, as a quick little reminder, the Q&A is at the dashboard on the bottom of your screen. So I'm going to get us started with a couple questions. So it looks like Marie is asking, how can facility managers advocate for resources and support from senior management to address workforce shortages effectively?
So basically, she is trying to give us, our description for kind of that next webinar topic. But to continue to beat that drum of selling, the biggest part of it is even with something like, trying to, like Brian mentioned earlier, we need to make that ROI justification. Unfortunately, within facilities, we're pretty much always going to lose that battle on the return on investment, because what we have to do is show that the corollary of, okay, it's not can you afford to invest in, let's say, replacing that chiller. The flip of that is, well, can you afford to not to? And so I think that really is more of us identifying not just the cost, because that's all that upper management hears, is that, oh, your overhead, necessary evil. I mean, all those things that we've been called, to saying, okay, here is the potential risk, and here's the potential production loss. So, right, that's a much larger number than to, let's say, replace that chiller. So yeah, that chiller cost me $250,000, but if we don't replace it and we continue to have more downtime, here's the impact to production, here's the impact to quality, here's the impact to operations. Those are big dollar signs. So if we don't do a good job of understanding that relationship and then communicating it, we're going to continue to be stuck at that, hey, you're a cost center. So again, that's another great discussion for us to definitely have here, hopefully in the near future.
And I'll expand on that. I would say even go talk to your production team and see where their worst costs are coming from, and being able to, you as the maintenance team, help them avoid that, which often is preventing, breakdowns and whatnot. And now all of a sudden you have a different story. It's not just the maintenance team going and talking about it. It's the maintenance team and the production team advocating to invest in a specific area to increase production. And as soon as you're starting talking more about, hey, how to make money versus save money, there's something psychological about that flips, that just is received a lot better. And so I would advocate like talk with your colleagues in the other departments like production and see what you can do. Now this varies from facility managers to maintenance managers of plants and whatnot. You may be like, hey, I run a school, right? Like I'm doing all the maintenance of the school. There isn't really production, like there aren't production lines at schools, right? And so you have to figure out in your specific area, what is the biggest thing that they care about most? Is it student satisfaction, or it could be a wide range of different things, right? But figure out what matters most to them, what metric they want to move, and then tie the equipment replacement or whatever investment you're wanting to do to improving that metric. So again, in like manufacturers, it's going to be what they're producing. In schools, maybe it's student satisfaction or something else like that.
In higher ed, it's res life. It's the housing. I don't know what it is. You'd think it'd be education, but yes, they get most of it come because you know what, the hot water's not working in my dorm. So
yeah, and maybe that's what it is. It's like, hey, investment causes way less requests coming in, or we'll be able to respond way quicker to it, or whatever. Again, if you figure out the why of the person you're trying to convince, it can go a long way for you building the ROI to impact their why.
Absolutely.
That's super helpful.
Perfect. And it looks like we have time for one last question. So Gregory was wondering, are there ways facility managers can collaborate with other departments to address shared workforce challenges together?
So basically trying to maybe cross-train, that would be an interesting one. What I usually do in partnering with other departments and encouraging that is, especially as facilities, we are a support entity of those other departments. So I actually encourage facility managers and directors to meet with those other key department stakeholders at least once a year to identify what are they trying to achieve, and usually do this around that the whole goal planning for the next year, that goal setting time frame, and say, hey, what are you trying to achieve this next year? And they're going to say, well, let's see, with respect to facilities, no, I'll figure out the facilities part. You tell me what you guys are trying to accomplish. And also, what are some of those challenges or potential inhibitors to you being successful in meeting those goals? And then let me figure out, as the facilities person, how can we come alongside you to help you be successful? And I think with that, you start developing that partnership, and then you're also gleaning a lot of very useful information that you could use to feed into your budget, into your goal setting that you're doing. And then ideally, you're gaining additional champions that can help you when you go to put forward your budget. The other departments, basically lobbying on your account, saying, no, we need facilities to do this, and here's why.
Yeah, no, I echo that same thing, is getting on the same page with your other departments to be able to try and move certain objectives, like increasing production or whatever, is super helpful. And then you can address the weak points, which in this case would be workforce challenges. And so if you're coordinating with them, that is, I mean, it's a superpower. And John mentioned once a year. I'd even advocate it more than that. That communication is super impactful.
Absolutely. And we actually do have one other comment, actually a suggestion that came through. The University of Texas at Austin Facility Services Department actively pursues partnerships with vocational trade / technical schools. And we sit on their advisory boards to ensure that we have a say in their curriculum. From Oscar, just added that comment in there.
Yep.
Great addition.
That's great.
Well, thank you. It looks like we are out of time. Thank you again so much, John, Erin, and Brian for this webinar today. And thank you for our audience for joining us. And of course, to Limble for sponsoring this webinar. A recording from today's session will be made available on our magazine's website, facilityexecutive.com, and at limblecmms.com. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.